and welcome to another brand new episode of Dingers and Stingers, the podcast that would never steal her, because to be honest, I hardly know her. Welcome to the show. My name's Dallas. That's Matt. You know that already, but here we are, and look, the time is upon us. We are starting for our NFL show this week. We are beginning our division previews. That means the season is around 8 weeks away from the time we're reporting this, which is crazy. It sneaks up on you, all that, but we're getting it. We're in the run up now, so we're going to start previewing these divisions. And as you might have guessed from my intro here, we are going to start with the AFC North. So
Can I just butt in real quick? I just want to shout out. When we started this podcast, we were talking like Super Bowl stuff. Like we were at the end of a season, and now we're already coming up on another season. This is going to be episode 25. That's crazy.
I know. We started the show at the end of the last season. Now we're in the run up to the new one. It's awesome. We're loving it. We're having so much fun. Hope you are too at home. And we're gonna have a lot of fun with our division previews. We love doing these. We did these for baseball. If you missed it, preseason to that, and so we thought we'd give it a shot in football too. And so, like I said, we're gonna start with the AFC North. And just to start, AFC North. This is a division for me that I do not pay attention to at any time ever. I don't know about you, but it's always been the case for me. So I never do during the regular season, during the off season, nothing. And so I don't know about you, AFC North. What are your general, feelings about this as a division?
I mean, as like a hardcore football fan, I do inevitably end up following most of the teams. I will say, AFC North, I find they're the historic division. Like truly, these are some of the like original teams, and there's so much history in this division, and yet I just find them to be so boring. Like this division feels boring, even when they're good. They do it in boring ways. So I don't know. It's an interesting division to break down, but I think it's a good one to start off with. There's been a lot that's happened.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's fundamentals, it's defense, it's run the rock, it's all this stuff. And so it's not, with the current Bengals hopefully accepted from that this year, hopefully they'll be the exciting.
Yeah, they may be breaking away from that.
But we'll get to what we think about the Bengals in a second. So let's start here. And I want to start with the same place we started with our MLB division previews. We're going to start with where we've been. So we're going to recap 2024 division standings here. So real quickly, this is how this division ended in 2024. The Ravens won the division with 12 wins and 4 losses. They lost to the Bills in the divisional round of the playoffs. The Steelers came second, and they won 10 games and lost 7. And they lost to the Ravens in the wild card round of the playoffs. The Bengals did not make playoffs, and they finished third with 9 wins and 8 losses. And the Cleveland Browns finished fourth with a staggering 3 wins and 14 losses, a truly abysmal mark there for the Browns at the end of the year. But so that's how it shaped out in 2024. And did anything stand out to you about 2024 for these teams? Just thinking about it in general, AFC North teams from 2024. What do you think about when you think about that?
I mean, when I think about last year, I think the big standout points looking at this are the development of Lamar Jackson. He has always been considered, one of the best, if not the best, running quarterback maybe ever. But last year he really kind of brought along his passing game with that. And I think that was a huge portion of why the Ravens had the success they did. They have a worse offensive line than they did when he was drafted and when he was setting all these rushing records. And yet he still continues to put it together. He's getting better as a pocket passer. He's still just as lethal in the open field as a runner. But that was a really exciting development in the division. And then I think the Bengals really were they were like a highlight in the way of a low light in that defense was remarkably unclutch. Like remarkably so. And last year, Joe Burrow played out of his mind. Uh, they had a great offensive season. And if you look purely at the numbers, you wouldn't think that this is a team that missed playoffs and was barely sitting above 500. You would think that this would be one of the playoff teams, and yet it wasn't. Because every time the Bengals scored 30, the defense gave up 35. Every time the Bengals scored 35, defense gave up 40.
Hmm.
It just felt like every step along the road, that defense found a way to one up themselves or like one down themselves in a way. Like
Yeah.
it was remarkable. And then the Browns have been a circus for the last 5, 6, 20 years. So at this point, you kind of don't know what to expect with them. So I don't know. Pittsburgh, it's a lot of it was predictable. The Bengals were anything but, and yeah, it's interesting stuff going down.
Yeah, so we'll get into the weeds on some of these teams right now. So what we're going to do now is talk about where we're going. So we're going to talk about 2025. We're going to talk about offseason recaps, and then we're going to talk about division predictions and where we see this team going for the next season. So all of this is time stamped to today. Something crazy could happen sometime in the next 8 weeks and change everything that we're talking about. But we're going to talk about it as if everything is as it is right now today, and see what we think is going to happen. So let's start. We'll go in finishing order. So we'll talk about the Ravens first. So in Baltimore, you know, and when I think about 2024 for Baltimore, it seems like it was just another year of they were, third best in the AFC when it comes to the playoff time. They were the best in the regular season. They looked like it was finally the time where they could, you know, actually make it happen against the Chiefs or the Bills in the playoffs. And after a couple years of that being the case and it not happening, and it just went the same way as it
Hmm.
has in the last few years. They lost to the Bills. It's either the Chiefs or the Bills. They just can't get past them. And so going into this offseason, it was difficult because they were so good to find any way that they could really like improve enough or even a little. But there were definitely ways that they could get worse if they didn't do certain things. So I want to have you take us through the Ravens offseason and talk about, you know, additions, extensions, departures. Let's start there, and then we'll talk about what this team looks like now.
Yeah, so among the notable kind of additions and extensions, um, they obviously were able to bring back DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah.
He kind of offers a unique skill set that I think they haven't really had at the wide receiver position in a while. They've had a lot of these quicker, shiftier guys, and he's going to provide like a true red zone and like outside big threat, um, which I think is definitely on their mind considering the way those playoff games ended,
Hmm.
with the dropped passes in the end zone by Mark Andrews and some of the red zone failures that they had. So they just continue to build on the red zone offense. But on the other side of the ball, they were able to bring in two DBs, Chidobe Awuzie, I believe it's actually Awuzie,
Hmm.
and Jairi Alexander, to go alongside Marlon Humphrey and some of those younger guys they have. I forget the name of the kid off the top of my head, but the rookie out of Clemson. So they've actually been able to build quite a good defensive back group here. They were able to re-sign Ronnie Stanley, which is obviously huge. He's kind of the staple left tackle. But then they've also had a couple guys leave. They had their offensive guard, Patrick McCarry, leave. They had one of their cornerbacks, Brandon Stevens, leave. And then I think the big and like arguably most notable departure slash off-season move for the Ravens this year has been Justin Tucker, and kind of the whole debacle that he's been going through. Um, we don't need to get into it on the pod, but if you don't know about it, you can look up all the stuff going on with Justin Tucker right now. But historically, was the best kicker of all time until this season. Had a bit of a rough season, and surprisingly, and then after the news broke, unsurprisingly, was released by the Ravens in this offseason. So Where they'll go with their kicking game, who's to say? But those were kind of the big moves. There's obviously been some like little moves here and there, but those are the big ones for sure.
You hope that when you do not now have, I would you could argue that they didn't have, you know, Justin Tucker being himself last year. You could argue that. So, but certainly this year they don't have him at all. So when you don't have Justin Tucker at kicker, you would hope that that plus the addition of DeAndre Hopkins would, inspire this team to perhaps be more aggressive when it comes to when they get to that part of the field where it was, you know, we're at the 45, we can it's fourth and four. We're at the 45. They would kick it to Tucker and take the 3 points because he's, a kicker who can make that
It
field
was
goal pretty
automatic.
reliably, pretty reliably. But now that they don't have him, and they will have somebody either, a rookie or somebody who they sign that is an old guy, seems to be the way that it goes, a young guy or a really old guy, and so now that they won't have that, you hope that maybe we'll start to. This was a team that was already, on the aggressive side, unlocking things like Derrick Henry, unlocking Lamar Jackson. That double threat back there was already hell in fourth and short for defenses. But now adding someone with sure hands like DeAndre Hopkins, and hopefully Mark Andrews was hitting the jugs over the course of the offseason, getting those hands nice and seasoned, getting them ready so that they don't bounce off him. And so, you had somebody like DeAndre Hopkins with sure hands and short yardage situations. You would think that hopefully this unlocks that next gear of aggressiveness in those situations, and we can see the Ravens sort of take their offense to a new level from a scoring perspective. If you think maybe.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, with the development of Lamar Jackson and then kind of, it was made popular with Ben Johnson and the Lions the past couple of years, but like that ideology of let's just go for it on fourth down. Like, let's not punt, let's not kick the field goal, let's not do any of this unless you like need to. There's obviously kind of like a game within the game with that, but put the ball in Lamar's hands. I mean, he's one of the best playmakers in the league. You got to be able to trust him to make up 3, 4, 5 yards, right? Like when push comes to shove, you give the ball to Lamar, you spread your guys out and see what he can do. And I think we could see a lot more of that with them this year, given the lack of Justin Tucker and the fact that they can't just have an automatic 3 points from anywhere on the field. They may have to go for it more, which could increase their offensive numbers in an exciting way. Could also not, but I like to think
Right.
positively.
Right. And so, yeah, that's the other side of it for sure. But the positive case is something that, for someone who likes to watch, football and watch exciting football, it's a very exciting prospect for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and so, okay, so let's talk about X factors for the Ravens. So Drew did provide us with some X factors. Shout out to Drew for doing the work,
Rest in peace.
even though he knew he wasn't going to be here for this. So I will take those on his behalf, and I'll take responsibility and accountability for them too. I trust my man. But these are Drew's picks; they're not mine. So we'll talk about X factors, but we'll start with you, Matt. Who's your X factor for the Ravens, and why, please?
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of what I was just talking about. It's a little bit boring, but I think the X factor has to still be Lamar. At the end of the day, when you're playing in the AFC and your opponents are going to be presumably Joe Burrow's, Josh Allen's, Patrick Mahomes, when you're playing against those guys and that's the playoff field, you're going to need Lamar to be Lamar. It can't be this team where, and I think a lot of people would hope, that's why they invested in Derrick Henry and all these things. I don't think that come playoffs, they're going to be able to just play defense and hand the ball off. Unfortunately, that's not how AFC playoffs have really turned out for any of
Right.
these teams, despite the cold weather, despite the notion of you got to get hard nosed in playoffs. The AFC's kind of changed the narrative around that. These playoff games in the AFC are fireworks, and you got to have your guy who lights the fireworks. And for them, it is Lamar. It has been Lamar. And Lamar was at his best last year and unfortunately came up short due to some unfortunate drops. But I think if he can stay the course, I don't see Mark Andrews dropping that ball twice. At the end of the day, I don't see Mark Andrews dropping that ball twice. And I genuinely believe if they beat the Bills, I think that they would have been the team in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That being said, that's playing a lot of what ifs and a lot of, uh, imaginative stuff, but that's where it's at. I think Lamar needs to maintain that passing production and maintain his MVP numbers if they're gonna really stand a chance. They have a good team, obviously, but I think this team goes as far as he goes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one for sure. And then the other one that we have here, the other X factor we have is we've already talked about it a little bit, but whoever does end up kicking for them could be,
Yeah,
one of the most important players, truly, because at times you will need that three or you will
yeah,
need those extra points. They do come in handy
they
at
add
some
up.
point. Yeah, and so you need those to be at least reliable in certain situations, especially in clutch situations as well. So whoever does end up kicking for them, I would hope that they would try to go with someone who is experienced, who can still kind of go for it because of those situations. You're not trying to look for someone who can replace Justin Tucker's top ability of at 50 yards he's still like 95% all the time.
Yeah,
But what you do need is someone who can consistently make field goals in situations where you need them, and who can be 98.6% on extra points. Like
hundred
miss
percent.
one, maybe two all year long, so you can just have that tucked in your back pocket. We don't need to worry about that. Otherwise, you end up in a situation like I don't know, freaking
Any notable Chargers team of the past like 12 years?
yeah, Chargers, like Colts, like uh, people who just have been trying to find a kicker who can just stay on the field.
Yeah,
So that's another one that could be an X factor is whoever does end up kicking them for them. So look, the Ravens were able to get, they were able to avoid getting markedly worse. They retained Ronnie Stanley, which you mentioned, so that would have been, something to remark about if, and a reason to believe that they might, not do as well as they did last year this year, but they retained him. And so it's difficult to say that they'd be anything but one of the top teams in the AFC at this point, before the season started. They were also able to carry over key members of their coaching staff, which has not really been the case, certainly before the last season. We got one of them over in Seattle. And so, but coordinators and head coach coming back again this year. So that kind of consistency is, some another factor that could, also just increases the confidence in the Ravens as we go forward. So if the plan is to stay the course, who can blame them? Just
yeah,
run it back. Hope you get luckier with drops and things like penalties, and hope that you can find a kicker that's solid, and they shouldn't have too much trouble, getting back to the playoffs this year. Um,
absolutely.
all right, so let's move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who finished second last year, and they seem to be very content with their regular season finish last year. Um, they liked what they were doing. They were confident in Russell Wilson to carry them forward through the rest of the year. Um, on the back of that great defense, that serviceable quarterback play, they made the playoffs, and they were, of course, unceremoniously bounced by the Ravens out of the playoffs. And so the mission this offseason was to address the offensive side of the ball, and well, they certainly
It's
got
different.
some. They got some. It's different. They got some names on there. So let's talk about who they got and take us through the Steelers offseason, and see who's on this team now, and who's also not on this team that was last year.
Yeah, so the Steelers added a number of like notable names. You're gonna recognize pretty much everyone I mentioned on this list. Um, On the offensive side of the ball, they've added DK Metcalf. We all know DK Metcalf. They added Jonnu Smith. We all know Jonnu Smith, Arthur Smith's best friend.
Right.
They added Aaron Rodgers. We're all aware of Aaron Rodgers. On the defensive side of the ball, they add Jalen Ramsey. We, of course, all know Jalen Ramsey. Darius Slay, big play Slay, previously of the Lions and then the Eagles. We're all fairly aware of his game. It's I don't even know. We'll get to that. Guys who have then left the team, right? That's the guys that they've added this offseason. Guys who have left. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Minka Fitzpatrick, George Pickens, Najee Harris. It's startling how like one for one those lists feel to me.
Right.
It feels like they have somehow found a way to replace everything with the exact same thing and are going to expect something different. And, they added some players I really like. I like Jalen Ramsey. I like Darius Slay. I honestly like Jonnu Smith. DK Metcalf is a very talented guy. That being said, I really like Minka Fitzpatrick. I really personally liked Najee Harris. I personally really like Justin Fields. I think George Pickens is a really talented guy. You go from one messy in a different way quarterback room to now having messy Aaron Rodgers.
Mm-hmm.
It just is this weird thing where I feel like the Steelers believe that just by making moves to make moves, people are going to give them a pass and say, well, they tried. So when they do the exact same thing and have the exact same result this year, they won't come for our heads. Whether or not that's true for Pittsburgh fans, I don't know. But I got to tell you, this is eerily reminiscent of the Rams' years under Jeff Fisher, where we would bring in very, established, prominent, veteran, past their prime guys, and they'd be brought in and represent this new wave of hope. And us as Rams fans were like, okay, maybe this is the year it's going to be different. We've got these 3 or 4 new guys who are all 34, 35 years old and are way past their prime, but they've been really good. And then we'd go 7-8. We'd go 7-9. And then the next year, the same thing. New guys come in and we'd go 7-9 or 6-10. And it's the same thing with the Steelers, man. They do all this stuff, they change all these pieces, and yet every year they finish at or above 500. I mean, above 500. Mike Tomlin's never finished below 500. I get it.
True.
It just feels like a slightly better version of what the Rams under Jeff Fisher were. And I don't know how to feel about that. I'm not a Steeler fan by any mark. By any means am I a Steeler fan. I feel bad for Steelers fans right now. I really do. Like, they're just caught in this, endless machine. It's terrible.
Yeah, it does feel like cycling through. Like, yeah, you got Jalen Ramsey, but to get him, you had to give up Minka Fitzpatrick. And that's not making your team better, I don't think. Like,
If
it's making
anything, it's
them,
one for one.
it's not making them worse, but it's not making them better.
Mm-hmm.
They got DK Metcalf, but they now don't have George Pickens. And so it's like, okay, when they were going to be together, that was going to be interesting.
Yeah.
But now that they're not, like that's not an improvement at the position.
Well,
And you could say the same about the quarterback too. Same thing.
and let me say this. This will be my last thing on Steelers, but it really has to be pointed out. Arthur Smith is a psychopath, an actual sociopath. Because let me tell you this tight end group. We got Pat Freiermuth. We've got second round pick Darnell Washington, very talented guy. We have the brother of Cam, or what's his name? The defensive tackle on the team. Dude's a stud. He's been a stud
Hayward.
forever. Hayward. We have his little brother.
Yeah.
Cam Hayward's little brother is also a tight end, solid tight end. Now we have Johnu Smith, an Arthur Smith favorite. They have four guys who you could argue should be playing on the field at tight
Right.
end. And, there was jokes that they were going to roll out all tight ends and DK Smith and a quarterback. And they were just going to essentially tush push the ball down the field with all these big guys. And now it looks more likely than ever. Like, what is this team? What is this roster makeup? Why do we have four starting tight ends? Why are we paying so many tight ends? It's 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 nuts, man. It's absolutely nuts.
Yeah, nuts is a good word. So let's move on to X factors, and we'll have some more questions about this offense here in this segment here. But I'll go first on X factors. Uh, you know, uh, ownership could be a real X factor this season. I
Yeah.
think to expect a season that's largely similar to the past decade or so of the Steelers football that we've seen here. They need to show some urgency, and I mean they've when you look at the names on paper that they've acquired, you would say they are showing urgency. But then again, we've mentioned they've lost an equivalent player in the acquisition of these players. So it's really netting out to not that much improvement. And so, look, sweeping changes may be on the horizon in the middle of this year if things don't start well, or at the end of this year. And, that could include Mike Tomlin's time with the Steelers coming to an end. It could signal the start of a new era. This team that does, famously doesn't fire coaches very often or at all. But you could see that happen. It just could be time for a change of scenery for both Tomlin and the Steelers. Tomlin, who's still, by coaching standards, very young, and could coach somewhere else for sure, but could do well with a change of scenery perhaps. So yeah, ownership could be an X factor for the Steelers this year in those ways of like stepping in to a season that may be headed off the rails if the negative case for this team really starts to manifest itself. But who is your X factor for the Steelers this year?
Yeah, I'm going boring again, but I'm going with Aaron Rodgers because at the end of the day, they're playing this experiment where it's can we play great defense and figure out something on offense, right? And that's been kind of the curse of the Steelers since Big Ben left. And this is just their next attempt at figuring that out, but they're not going to go anywhere until they find a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Like at the end of the day, they had Russell Wilson, they had Justin Fields, they've had a number of other guys that have come in there. They drafted Kenny Pickett and they tried that. None of it's worked. So their thought process has to be, okay, Aaron Rodgers is going to be better than those guys. I guess, if historically, sure. Historically, Aaron Rodgers has been better than those guys. But the NFL is very much a what have you done for me recently kind of league. And recently, Aaron Rodgers has been far, far, far more annoying to a team than he has been a positive asset.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how that works out for them. I don't think personally it works out well for them, but clearly they're staking at least this year on it because their backup situation is abysmal behind him. So they better hope he lasts.
Yeah, that's true. And I want to mention this too. Like, okay, so talk about this offense. Aaron Rodgers, his current skill set, based on his most recent play with the Jets, he still has the go ball a little bit. DK Metcalf is a good fit for that. He is still consistent with short and mid range on time stuff. He can hit a target on time. You have guys with sure hands like Fryermuth, Johnny Smith, who they acquired. Things like that. DK Metcalf could fit in there in the right route situation as well. Um, and what Aaron Rodgers can't do anymore is, you know, make a play happen after it's broken down, right? So um, I think that if you think about that, the players that they have are sort of well suited to what he can do if he can still do it well. And that's going to be the biggest question: is does he still have enough left um, to do it? And so the positive case for this offense would look like what to you?
I think the positive case for this offense would be Aaron Rodgers stepping back from his ego and letting the offense be the scheme that it is. Because famously, he has tried to come in and kind of like big dog his way into running the offense he wants, which is a very pass first, very, not air raid, but it's a very spread. He comes from Cal, which famously has a very spread offense, and he's always run it that way. It's why he had issues with Mike LaFleur in Green Bay, because he wanted to commit to running the ball, and Aaron Rodgers didn't like that. And it's insane to me that he's picked the Steelers if he thinks he's going to have a chance at making this his own offense. Because Arthur Smith, my man, does one thing and one thing: it's run the ball.
Mhm.
So if he's willing to take a step back and say, I recognize where my weaknesses are at this point, you're absolutely right. I mean, he can still hit the go ball. He can still hit a well timed slant or in route. A lot of these, on pace, on target, kind of in breaking routes, out breaking routes. He can do it all on rhythm,
Mhm.
but he's not going to produce outside of that.
Right.
So I don't think he's going to be throwing for 4,500 yards and 30 touchdowns, but could he have a year where he throws for 3,500 and maybe somewhere in the mid high 20s? And I think the important thing is keeping those turnovers down, which historically he's been good at. Can he throw 25 touchdowns to 3 interceptions? If he does something like that, there's no reason to think they can't be a playoff team. I just think when that's the ceiling, you better be damn sure that your running game and defense are that good.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, to wrap on the Steelers here, their offseason edition, we've talked about it. It features notable names, but I think one of the big questions is the chemistry. Rodgers,
Yeah,
Metcalf, Ramsey, and Slay are all big personalities. Some of them have even clashed with each other on the field and off the field already in their
like who?
careers. Who's to say who, hates each other the most of these four? So this locker room feels like it's one 4 game losing streak away from a complete nuclear explosion.
Yeah,
And so, you know, all that considered, though, the defense should still be good. And if the offense can get to gel quickly, the best version of this team, is formidable. So we'll see what happens with the Steelers. I think you could argue that the only reason that they made the playoffs last year is because the team we're about to talk about, the Bengals, had one of the more disappointing teams, or one of the most disappointing seasons of any team last season. So the Bengals entered the offseason with a laundry list of concerns, right? Particularly on the
yeah.
defensive side of the football. They were abysmal last year. We'll talk a little bit about that more. Some of those items were checked off the list. Others have yet to be resolved. In addition, new problems have arisen as a result of drafting and contract
hmm
language and things like that we'll talk about. But it makes for an intriguing run up to the season that's worth monitoring for the Bengals. So let's talk about their offseason. Let us know about their offseason, and then we'll talk about the current version of this team and where we see it going.
Yeah, and I'll throw one more note for Steelers. Just speaking on contract stuff, it's kind of a recent development that TJ Watt is looking to become the highest paid non-quarterback. He wants to surpass Myles Garrett's number.
Oh,
And that's going to potentially cause some issues as well. There's talks that they could look into trading him, because the odds of him getting paid that from the Steelers is not high. So if you're banking on that defense and you're looking at trading TJ Watt is your defense, it's not a great place to be. But Cincinnati Bengals, the truly the disappointment of last season, I think would be fair to say
yeah.
the disappointment of last season. Um, in the offseason, they have done the exciting thing, which is they have re-signed Jamar Chase. They have, I believe, only franchise tagged T. Higgins. I'm
Yeah.
not sure that a full extension has come out yet, but they have franchise tagged T. Higgins. They've been able to gain some new guys and retain guys like Mike Gesicki. Geno Stone, the safety, Zach Moss, the running back, he's back. Um, they've done the exciting thing. And, I think this is very similar to their draft mentality back in the day when there was those memes of, you know, do they want Joe Burrow throwing to Jamar Chase with nobody in front of him? Or do they want Joe Burrow throwing to nobody with Penei Sewell in front of him? And that was
Hmm.
like the big debate. They went with Jamar Chase. They went with the exciting pick. And for a while, that was working for them. Um, that wasn't so much the case this past season. Uh, Joe Burrow has been absolutely beat up his first few seasons, and it seems to only be getting worse. And with that, going to the notable departures, they lost one of their offensive tackles, Jonah Williams. They lost their backup tight end, Irv Smith Jr. They lost their nose tackle, DJ Reader, and one of their most underrated defenders, Jermaine Pratt, the linebacker. And mixed in with all of this happening is the nonsense that's going on with Trey Hendrickson and rookie Shamar Stewart.
Yeah.
I'm not sure there's words really to describe what's happening there other than like pure mismanagement of their assets. Because Trey Hendrickson has been the league leader or top two, top three in sacks for the last, I don't know, 4 seasons. And
Hmm.
yet they refuse to give him a paycheck. They seemingly draft his replacement in Shamar Stewart, and now they are seemingly refusing to meet him anywhere with his rookie contract, and it's looking like he may end up opting out of his contract and foregoing his rookie season and re-entering the draft.
Yeah.
And there's just such a whirlwind of messiness happening with the Bengals. And I thought this was a thing of the past. I mean, my dad talked to me a lot about, the Bengals have always been known historically as being a team that's very, you know, they seem to always mismanage their assets. And they seem to always be a little bit goofy with their salary and with the moves they make. And it seemed like they had kind of turned that around with this new regime. Um, and maybe that's just not the case. Maybe they just struck gold for a little bit. Maybe they just had lightning in a bottle for a little bit with Joe and Jamar because this roster feels like it's fallen apart at the seams.
Yeah, it does a little bit, and certainly the worst case scenario looks really bad for the defense for the Bengals, a defense that was already not good last year, missing some key contributors to start the
Yeah,
year if they don't get this Trey Hendrickson thing figured out. And so, not to say nothing of the help that Shamar Stewart could give them if they figure his stuff out. But from there on the Bengals, let's just move to X factors here. So I'll start here, and I think one of the biggest X factors for the Bengals season this year is going to be coming out of the gate strong.
yep,
Winning these games to start the year, because that was their whole thing last year. Is that we were all sort of taken aback by how they started, and they lost to some bad teams early last year, and ended up being the difference between them making the playoffs and the Steelers making the playoffs. If they had beaten teams they were supposed to beat early on, they would be in that position. And by the time that the season was over last year, the offense was playing very, very well. And even with a bad defense, you could see them making it at least past the wild card round, depending on who they played. But um, so that's going to be the key thing here. They have a third place schedule. They are not a third place caliber team. They are they, at least the offensive side of the ball, they are a, first place caliber. They have first place caliber players and skill sets there. And so they need to take advantage of this third place schedule and start strong. Their start to the year is Browns, Jaguars, Vikings, who have currently a question mark at quarterback in JJ McCarthy. We don't know what he's going to be like yet. And then the Broncos, who I think will be good this year. But we'll talk about them later. So those are three, I think right now, very winnable games for the Bengals, as long as they can play to their capability, and as long as the defense can keep things in front of them. Now that's going to be the biggest question, but to start the year, Browns, Jaguars, Vikings, and then maybe even Broncos. that could be a good start if you play up to your capability. So starting off well as opposed to last year is going to be an X factor for this team to get rolling and get started well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, my X factor kind of goes hand in hand with that because a lot of the games that they lost like that was kind of like we talked about. It just seemed like no matter what, it didn't matter if it was 20 seconds left on the clock, 2 minutes, 4 minutes. If the Bengals didn't have the ball last, they were going to lose because their defense seemed like it was giving up the most unthinkable touchdowns at the most unthinkable times. And so my X factor is going to be this defense, and more specifically, this defensive line, because you got to be able to close games. Like every great team that's ever been has been able to close games, even if it's just because they have an excellent pass rusher, i.e., Trey Hendrickson. Something on the defense is able to put a close to a game. And, famously of recent, the Chiefs, they have not had always the best defenses. They've not always had the best, team stats in terms of defense, but they've always had Chris Jones, a disruptor on the defensive line who's been able to end teams' momentum late in games. And so I think, the X factor being this defensive line, they if they don't get Shamar Stewart or Trey Hendrickson, somebody's going to have to step up and really become a force because otherwise I think it's going to be a lot more of the same for them this year.
Yeah, so the Bengals, they took care of business on the offensive side of the ball. They re-signed Jamar Chase. They kept T. Higgins around with that franchise tag. The defensive side of the ball needed the most help. It's debatable whether it got it or not. The developing situations with Trey Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart may be like one of the most consequential in all of football right now. Like as the Bengals look to have that bounce back campaign, that really is going to be something, one of the most important situations to watch as training camp starts and the preseason unfolds. They have got to get at least one of those guys figured out, or else they risk, completely torpedoing any sort of progress that they could have made toward, at least taking over second place from the Steelers, for God's sake. Like you've got to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And so at least that, and then, you should be able to make some noise, at least for the division lead with a team like this. So, the Bengals, they are that team that's just the pieces are there. It's just they have got to do the work to get them all in the right place. And if they can do that, I think they should be optimistic, especially with that, third place schedule. And then, we'll see where they go. But if they can't do it, it's going to be really not worth uh, having both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on the team and just wasting another year of all of that.
It's scary how much they've committed to those three players. Like that's a lot of their salary cap that's locked up in those three. And if this
Mhm.
offense isn't willing to put up 40 points a game, they could be in a lot of trouble this year.
Huge trouble. Huge trouble. So speaking of huge trouble, let's go on to the last team in this division. And so let's talk about the Cleveland Browns now to round out our AFC North preview. So rightfully, the NFL's laughingstock, the
Yeah.
Cleveland Browns, they had another embarrassing year in 2024 for myriad reasons. Their defensive line was the lone bright spot. The team struggled to keep up in any game. This is a franchise that's in an abysmal place right now, and the priority for the offseason was very much the same as it has been in recent history. Just find a dang quarterback. Like find somebody to throw the ball and to do it well. They had a very good quarterback in Baker Mayfield. They let go a few years ago now, and they signed the worst contract in professional sports history, perhaps, to Deshaun Watson, who will not probably play this year. And so let's talk about the Browns offseason, what they did to try to find that quarterback, and then anything else that they might have added and subtracted over the course of the offseason.
Yeah. So They were able to re-sign Myles Garrett, which is crazy because he made the big old stink about I want to play for a winner at least once in my career, and then they flashed him a little more green, and he re-signed. Can't blame him. Just a little sad because the thought of Myles Garrett playing anywhere else was actually very exciting in my idea. I
Yeah.
think he could have been really fun to just unleash him to the market of traders. I thought that would have been really fun, but
There are three places I would have not had him go, but anywhere else would have been fine. Yeah,
can I guess what those three are?
I bet you could.
I'm going to guess that it is the Rams, the
Yeah,
49ers, and the
yeah.
Eagles.
It's the Rams, the 49ers, and the Cardinals because I'm purely selfish.
Sure, sure, sure.
and,
I didn't
and I do
realize
not
that much.
I do not want to face him. But yes, that is if I was being unselfish, that's correct. Yes, because the Eagles' defensive line does not need to get any better, and so we need a new champion. So you're
Yeah,
right about that. But yeah, I was being selfish and just saying no NFC West team except
honestly,
me can have it.
honestly valid. Yeah, Myles Garrett in the Pacific Northwest,
He'd
that would have been
disappear,
something.
obscurity.
But yeah, so they addressed the quarterback room. I'll say that they let Jameis Winston go. Um,
Yeah.
for better or for worse, they let Jameis Winston go, and in return, they have added. Yeah, let's eat some dubs in here. They have added Joe Flacco. They have added Dylan Gabriel. They have added Kenny Pickett, and they have added Shitter Sanders. So they have added four quarterbacks, none of which is super overwhelmingly I'm the alpha quarterback here. Um, yeah, I think that this left a lot of people puzzled because they were so clearly the team in need of a quarterback, right? It was them, the Steelers, and you could argue, I guess, the Titans. They were like the three teams that were like quarterback, 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 because at least New York had signed Russell Wilson. They had some other options. This wasn't seen as like the best quarterback year, and yet they just let round after round after round go without addressing their quarterback position, and they end up with Dylan Gabriel, and then almost immediately follow that up with drafting Shador Sanders. It feels like maybe the front office wasn't aligned on who they wanted, so they decided, let's get them all. Um, to me, it feels like they have a lot of backup quarterbacks on this team. That being said, we'll get into that more. Other guys that they've added, they got Devin Bush, the linebacker, solid player, nothing special. Malik Collins, solid defensive tackle, nothing special. Deontay Johnson, at his best, could be really awesome. At his historical recency, probably won't see the field. Um,
Yeah.
and then they let go of Jameis Winston and Elijah Moore. So not a ton changed, and definitely a lot of let's just see if any of these quarterbacks kind of make a name for themselves. So an interesting situation to say the least.
Yeah, well, we'll stay on the quarterback for a bit as we talk X factors, because the first one that we'll talk about is mine and Drew's, which is whoever they decide is their quarterback will be an important player for this team. Now, they need to have that productive quarterback play to compete, and we've seen it with the Browns before, right? If they don't have productive play at quarterback, they end up very, very bad, like last year. Like they don't just end up bad; they end up really, really, really bad.
Yeah.
And so my question for you that I want your thoughts on is, for me, this does tip my opinion a little bit, me asking this question, but for you, is there a case where week one it's not just Joe Flacco? Like, is there a situation that you see possible that week one at least? I'm not saying he's going to start the most games of quarterback for the Browns over the course of the year. Who knows? But is there a case for you where week one it's not just Joe Flacco?
Um, yeah, I think there is a case. It depends on how much their front office and Kevin Stefanski are willing to just lay it all on the line, right?
Yeah.
They have two rookie quarterbacks. I, I I could see Joe Flacco being the starting quarterback. I think it's the most likely case that Joe Flacco is the starting quarterback. Only a few years ago, they went to the playoffs with Joe Flacco as their starting quarterback.
Yep.
I think Kenny Pickett is more going to be just a camp arm and an offseason arm, someone to add to the competition. But really, I think it comes down to Dylan Gabriel and Shador Sanders. Dylan Gabriel, ton of success. He is a very system-based quarterback. He's small. He's a timing-based quarterback. I think a lot of people will make the cheap argument that he's like Tua just because he is a lefty, smaller, timing-based quarterback. I don't see Tua because I think his arm is a lot weaker than Tua's. Um, I think Dylan Gabriel is a really great player and great guy who just has a lot of physical limitations to get past.
Hmm.
On the flip side, Shador Sanders is a little more prototypical with his size, his speed, his arm strength, all of that. He has a really pretty ball. Um, he just didn't, he never could make his team a winner,
Yeah.
despite getting a lot of influx of talent. He would beat up on the bad teams and lose to the good ones. And that's not the greatest sign of a long-term success for any player in any sport, really. Um, and that goes for players, teams, coaches, owners, whatever. When you have a tough time beating the good teams and you just beat up on the bad teams, it means you're perfectly average. It's almost foolproof. And so I could see a world where one of them gets the starting nod if Kevin Stefanski really says, let's just go balls to the walls, see what we got here. But I think that really is going to come down to ownership and kind of the pressure they put on Kevin Stefanski. Because if the owner doesn't really care, I think it's going to be Joe Flacco.
Yeah. And that leads well into our next X factor, which will be yours. So let's just kick right into that and talk about what your X factor for the Browns is this year.
Yeah, so my X factor was going to be Kevin Stefanski and their quarterback coach Bill Musgrave, um, because for multiple seasons now, this has been a roster where people said, "Hey, we've got a lot of talent on this team." They've had talented running backs. They've had talented offensive lines, talented defense. At times, they've had really talented receivers. Mari Cooper's come through. DeAndre Hopkins came through. Back in the day, they had Jarvis Landry come through. And, they've had all this talent. They have David Njoku now. They've got, what's his name, who came over from Denver, um, Jerry Judy.
Jerry Judy,
And,
yeah.
they have this talent. And this year they let go of Chubb, but they brought in, was it Omarion Hampton, the running back from North Carolina? No, they brought in Judkins from Ohio State,
Mm.
um, a talented running back. So they have all this talent, and yet it comes back to the same thing. They were good when they had Baker. They made the playoffs. They were competitive. They let him go. They brought in Deshaun Watson, biggest mistake they've ever made, and the team tanked because they didn't have a good quarterback. They didn't have a decent quarterback. They didn't have a consistent quarterback. Now that his whole mess has happened and they're back to kind of starting block one, the question's going to be, do they have a quarterback? And once again, the answer is we don't really know. Um, So I think it's going to come down to this coaching staff. Like, can they get decent quarterback play out of Joe Flacco? Can they make one of these young rookies into something? Because if not, I think it's another, you know, top three pick in the draft this upcoming year, and maybe their quarterbacks in that class. Who knows?
Who knows? And if they finish that poorly again, it'll be a new coach next year. I would have to assume things like that will
I
happen
have
as
to think
well.
so.
And so, think it would be a huge shakeup at that point, I think. But so the Browns, yep, they seem to have chosen the throw all the quarterbacks at the wall, see who sticks method. And when you've tried everything else, what else can you do? They've drafted, did they drafted Baker, right?
They drafted Baker.
Okay, yeah. So they drafted Baker. He worked out, but they let him go. in favor of signing the big free agent Deshaun Watson. That didn't work out for them. So now you try to draft again, and you just draft a couple guys who were, who could end up steals if they play well, if either one of them plays well, but could just end up being worthy of being picked where they were. And so, what else can you do when you've tried everything else? And with Myles Garrett back on board, shockingly, for what seems to be the long term, the defense should be okay as long as they can keep those pressure numbers consistent. And, the pressure numbers are a little bit inflated for the Browns because Myles Garrett wins so much at the
Yeah.
line, right? Like he's winning so much that it props up everybody else who's, not really winning at the line all that much, but he's back. So they're not going to have to worry about, those guys who, having to show who they really are on the defensive line without him because he's back. So the offense, though, anyone's guess, regardless of who's throwing the ball, it's anyone's guess at this point what's going to be what to make of that offense. But so we've come to the end here, and we've talked about all these teams in depth a little bit here. Let's talk about what we think will happen in this division, what we predict the 2025 division standings at the end of the year. I'll start, and on behalf of Drew, I will say that the finishing order for this division will be, and this was probably my order too, if I'm picking. So Ravens finish first. I just think they're too good to pick against. I think any year could be the one where they finally do it. And then I'll have the Bengals because I'm going to believe in the positive case. I think I'm going to believe that they can figure at least one of Hendrickson and Stewart out, and they'll start the season well, and they'll get on a roll, and Joe Burrow will be back to being him, as the kids say, capital H him. Then I'll go with Steelers. I think they will just not be as good as the Bengals. I think maybe they're in the Bengals record could be within 1 or 2 wins of each other, like last year, but just flip them. And I think that again, believing in the best case scenario for this team, I still think they're a third place ceiling. To be honest with you, because I have that much faith in the Ravens and that much faith in the best version of the Bengals. I think even the best case of the Steelers as a third place team compared to those two. And then I'll pick the Browns for last because I like to be right. And again, I talked about this in our last baseball episode, but process over results, right? You got to pick the Browns last. It's good process. It's sound.
You got to, right?
You got to. So that, if they finish in first or second or whatever, you're like, well, you know what? I was wrong, but at least I was right with the information I had at the time. Things like that. So with the information I have right now, I got to pick the Browns last. But how do you have this division finishing? What's the order for you?
Well, I gotta have the Browns last, which means I don't.
Yeah.
So, of course, I have the Ravens finishing first. I think that's pretty much the given at this point.
Yeah.
Until proven otherwise, they are kind of they're one of the juggernauts of the AFC, not just their own division. So Ravens first. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this. I think this is the second most talented roster in the division,
Mm-hmm.
and I have the Browns finishing second. I have the Steelers finishing third, because I think we see the very first below 500 season for Mike Tomlin. I do
Hmm.
think that Aaron Rodgers is average if he lasts the season. I just don't think the ceiling is there. And
Yeah.
if they start having guys like TJ Watt who are unhappy, if they have Jalen Ramsey and DK Metcalf getting into fights at practice, I just don't know that this is a team that puts it together on the field.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to be wrong. I mean, Mike Tomlin's worked miracles in that locker room, so
Sure has.
I guess benefit of the doubt to him, but not to me. Um, and last, because I think it truly is malpractice of roster construction, I have the Bengals. They have not invested in their offensive line. They have completely betrayed their defensive line, all in favor of having a quarterback and two flashy receivers. It's proven it never really works unless you have the other pieces in place. You either have to draft really well or get really lucky with development or just a number of things, but you can't invest all your salary cap into two receivers and a quarterback. It won't produce success in the NFL. So
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean, and the thing is, you're not wrong. Like you're not wrong. Like you're right. It's true. Like at some point, the football gods will punish you for making wrong decisions time after time after time,
mhm,
and they will punish you for being incompetent in your, player roster construction and roster selection, and
mhm.
the way that you disperse your salary. And so that will happen. And so it could happen to the Bengals this year, and they could just tank and be out. Not tank in the sense that it means now. I just mean tank as in fall off.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so yeah, you're right. It could be that's how it finishes, but we'll see how the AFC North finishes. But that'll wrap up our first division preview for NFL season. It'll also wrap up our NFL show for this week. So if you watched, thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Comment below what you think about the AFC North, your finishing order. Put it out there on the record for everyone to see so we can come back in December, January, and take a look and hold you accountable too. And then follow us on Instagram as well at Dingers and Stingers if you can. And until next time, we'll see you then. Goodbye.